G'day everyone, this is episode 100 and it is the snow edition, which is a nice sort of way to cap off the triple digit mark. Now, I want to talk about a bunch of different things today, but I'm going to try and be pretty brief about it because frankly, one of the things I want to talk about is how I really need to try and manage my time a little bit better in terms of taking time out. So, 100 I guess is a point where you reflect on things. One of the things I've been reflecting on, independently of the 100 to be honest, is that I'm having way too much time where I just don't get to tune out. So this trip, which we got here to the snow, and I will talk about the snow in a moment, got here on Sunday, so where are we now, 5 days ago, and it's the first time, I think, since I've been independent that I actually set an out of office on my email so that I might not get back to you straight away. I turned off notifications on my phone for Twitter and email as well, so I've just been trying to do stuff in the mornings and the nights, and the world has gone on. So things haven't crashed and burned, and it's actually kind of nice. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to try and start to do a lot more of this, like just tune all the stuff out during the day, maybe mornings and nights, and try and get a bit more balance, because particularly with large follower counts and heaps of emails and things, it's just been getting crazy, and that's not good for my productivity, and frankly it's not real good for family life either. So that said, that's going to happen a little bit more in the future, hopefully as I get a bit more time out. The snow. So people are first of all interested in the fact that we have snow in Australia, and yes, like this is actual snow. I mean, okay, granted, there are snow guns there, and I think this came from the man-made stuff last night, but we actually arrived here on Sunday to 25 centimetres of real fresh snow. And it's an interesting thing in Australia. So obviously people don't generally think of Australia as a snowy place. The place we live is one of the beachiest, sunniest places you can possibly imagine. So it was a 14-hour drive. I went to Sydney last week. I did my update from Sydney. That was 9 hours down to there, and then another 5 hours down to the snow. And I took a photo of the car before I left, and I'm driving my wife's AMG Mercedes, which is a V8 rear-wheel drive car. And people are like, they don't look like snow tyres. So pro tip, basically no one in Australia has winter tyres. The only people that actually use winter tyres, generally speaking, are people that live in areas like this. Everyone else who drives to places like this doesn't have winter tyres, they have normal summer tyres, and you are obligated to carry snow chains, such that if there are inclement conditions that were unexpected, you put your snow chains on. Now, I've been driving to this spot, let me see now, for probably the last 21, 22 years, really regularly, once or twice most seasons, and I've never had to use chains. So, partly as well, all the cars I had before this were all-wheel drive as well. You know, things like Subaru WRXs and stuff like that. So not sort of four-wheel drive off-roaders, but all-wheel drive enough such that once or twice when I came through and other cars were pulled over and said put on chains, the all-wheel drive stuff straight through. Anyway, so for the first time, and of course this time in a rear-wheel drive car, we came up here 25 centimetres of snow, and the radio's going, oh, you're going to have to put on chains, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, so we got chains. Came up the mountain. By the time we actually got to the spot you need to use it, the roads were clear enough, and there's just slush on the sides. So this is not like other parts of the world where it's like 30 centimetres of snow everywhere, and if you don't have snow tyres, you're screwed. Anyway, we got up to the mountain. We did eventually get the car a little bit stuck in one spot, and it was kind of like the most embarrassing spot ever to be stuck, because it was like this much, when I say this much ice, it was like this much lengthwise ice. It was just a tiny, tiny, tiny patch. But the problem is that car is meant to go fast on nice, clean bitumen, and it's got a semi-slick tyre, and it's lovely on good bitumen, not so good on the ice. So that was fun, getting out of there. It's not your normal problem. But be that as it may, that's sort of the only times that, like I say, in 21 years or something, I've ever had to deal with that. Got the car out, all good now. And it stays in the garage here, and there won't be any snow on the ground by the time we leave either. So, in terms of things to talk about today, I want to do one sort of general update thing, and then one other sort of, I thought, 100 show anniversary would be the time to do this. So the general thing is, I mentioned last week that, in fact, I recorded on a Thursday, and the Friday I was going to Canberra. Incidentally, a lot of wildlife in Australia. We have wombats, kangaroos, I've seen a few rabbits as well. So, a lot of nice stuff here. So anyway, mentioned I was going to Canberra, And I said, look, I can't remember if I said I was going to meet some government people as well. But they put out some tweets on Friday, and I met with the ACSC, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. A little bit like the NCSC in the UK, for folks who are over in that part of the world. Basically, government people who are there to try and look after us in terms of what happens in the cybers. And that's a very general thing to say. But it's everything from how do we help people make good decisions about personal security to how do we protect organisations, companies. And as some of you would know, they are using Have I Been Pwned in the same way as the NCSC in the UK are. And I spent the day with those guys, chatting to a whole bunch of people, doing some presentations, meeting some of the leadership there as well. And it was just really interesting. And I want to share something that really stuck out with me, because I think people really, really miss this. Without exception, everyone I met there in government, making or influencing the way decisions are made around things like the way we build government-based systems and what the cyber security impact on them is, every single person was awesome. And this goes for the NCSC folks in the UK and other government folks I've met before as well. Everyone is always super lovely. Really, really super smart people, very intelligent to be doing what they're doing. Also the kinds of people you want to go and have beers with, so yes, we did that as well. But just really genuinely nice people. And the reason why I wanted to raise that is one of the things that's really struck me continuously is the narrative that people have around governments, particularly as it relates to information security. And very often that narrative is that they're just always there to screw us. They just want to get into our bits and bytes and all the rest of it, eavesdropping, backdoors, yada, yada, yada. And I think there's certainly been a lot of cases where the communication around this stuff has been very, very bad around what governments want access to and what they want to do. And at the moment, we're having a lot of stuff in the press in Australia at the moment, and a lot of people mentioning it to me as well, because the headlines are, Australian government wants to backdoor encryption, yada, yada, yada. And I honestly don't know what this will look like when it pans out. But the position the government's put forward is, so said, turns out it's actually quite difficult to monitor a lot of communications between bad people because of the ubiquity of encryption. And I don't think any of us are going to argue about that. And then they've sort of said, well, look, we need to find other ways of effectively identifying when people are trying to blow us up, or other bad things that none of us want to happen. And of course, the narrative at the moment gets spun around to the fact that, it must be backdooring encryption and stuff like this. Now, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I am sort of growing increasingly frustrated that the narrative is often government's just there to try and screw us, and the people there are bastards who want to get into all of our data. Because every interaction I have anywhere in the world with different governments has always been really, really positive in terms of genuinely nice people actually trying to do a really hard job. Now, I'd really like to sort of talk more about this in the future, particularly as things start to pan out and we learn more about what they do intend to do. And I don't really have any good answers for how they're going to do that at the moment. I think it's a very hard problem. But I just wanted to put that out there because it's, at the end of the day, we sort of say government, and it's all governments, trying to make these decisions. But it's individuals. It's people working in these places, people like you and I that are passionate about what they do, and certainly in my experience, generally just want to do the best possible thing. So anyway, I thought I'd sort of share that, and hopefully I can add a little bit more substance to that in the future. So in terms of the 100, I was sort of thinking about what to do, and the first thing is I just noticed I'm about 9 minutes through, and this is between me and getting first tracks. So this is not going to be long, because as I was saying before, I do want to sort of focus on the family stuff. A lot of people are asking, like, what am I actually doing with my time? Like, what does my normal time look like these days? What do I do day to day? What do I do that actually helps me earn a living as well? So I thought I'd share a little bit of that. So, the online training is obviously still a large part of it. I'm still doing a bunch of Pluralsight stuff. I'm also still doing courses, as you might have seen, for the likes of Varonis. So I did some courses for them. I've done some stuff for Ubiquity before. This is online material that helps explain technology to often technical people, sometimes more mainstream people. So look, I'm still doing a lot of that. I really like being able to explain technology, and that is commercial work. So I do get paid to actually create that. And frankly, it's a hell of a lot of work, so I'm glad I get paid for it. Obviously, there's the conference side of things as well. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know is that most tech conferences that you'd hear about in the news, for example, so things like NDC, we don't get paid to speak at these events. There's no payment to speakers. It's speakers doing this because they love what they do. So obviously a lot of my time is still going on that for things like NDC. And a huge amount of effort goes into that to try and get talks done that are engaging and interesting and entertaining, and also that people learn some stuff from. But again, a bit of a loss leader. But it helps for exposure and interaction with people, etc. as well. Now, as I've written before, I've sort of written about things that conferences can do to piss people off. And I've used NDC as an example of sort of doing everything right. They do look after you in terms of travel and accommodation and all the rest of it. So there's that. No money, but good experiences. Now, the exception there is, I'm finding there's an increasing number of conferences in Australia where they say, look, we're a company that sells a security thing. We would like you to come and talk at this event because we're getting customers to come, and hopefully we'll get them interested in the thing that we sell, and they'll buy more of our cyber stuff. And they are commercial events, and rightly so too, because they're actually trying to make money out of it by selling their things. So I do a bunch of those. I've got a bunch more lined up in Oz this year as well. And of course the workshops too. So doing a lot of workshops which are commercial activities, and they're still very effective. I mean, this is what I was doing in Sydney just last week, and I will be doing in Sydney on Monday and Tuesday this week coming as well. And that's just the same thing over and over and over again, which if I'm honest, can get a bit repetitive, but has been a great way of connecting with a lot of organisations as well. So it's interesting to go into a company and hear about what their challenges are and what are the things that keep them up at night security-wise. So the workshops are still good. There's lots of other ancillary things as well. So for example, there's the blog sponsorship. I'm starting to plan 2019. Where are we? I'm starting to plan 2019 now because I sold all the 2018 slots in about a week, which also says that I'm terrible at pricing my blog sponsorship. But you know, that's something which companies are actually very interested in. So yeah, as it stands at the moment, I'm starting to book a little bit of 2019, and I'm just going to get more aggressive at the pricing because clearly I've done it badly. But that's good. I mean, that's another thing which allows me to sort of do what I do as well as earn a living out of it as well. So there's that. Obviously, a lot of my time is going on Have I Been Pwned as well. And everyone is familiar with exactly what Have I Been Pwned does. So that's, look, at the moment it's stuff like identifying data breaches, loading that in, building out new features, basically doing all of the things that I've been doing with that system for nearly 5 years now. And as I've said before multiple times in dedicated blog posts and in public, there are a small number of organisations that do pay for access to data as well. And this is data where the owners have an expectation of it being made available. So for example, the blog post I wrote about several years ago was an identity theft company. And they said, look, people pay us each year to identify when they're exposed in data breaches around the world. We would like access to that so that we can tell them. And to be clear as well, identity theft companies are a lot more than data breaches. They're things like fraudulent activity on credit cards, my social security number has been exposed somewhere inadvertently, etc., etc. So there's that side of things too. So that, you know, does allow me to have some aspect of Have I Been Pwned that has monetization. And of course, as many of you know, 1Password has partnered with what's my system again? Have I Been Pwned? Maybe it's the cold. It's just making everything go slower. So there's a partnership with those guys, which works out very well too, which kicked into gear a few months ago. So, you know, that's another aspect of things that keeps me very busy. Other than that, I still get a lot of queries almost on a daily basis, probably more than once a day, for media, because they want to talk about everything from backdooring encryption through to the latest malware strains or things that consumers should know and understand. So I get a lot of consumer press requests. They never pay a cent for anything either. Like, let's just be clear about that. They're like, think of the exposure. I want to talk about exposure in a second, actually. So I still do a lot of those. Due to where I live on the Gold Coast, some outlets want to do video and they'll sort of send a cameraman. Other times they're like, can you drive to Brisbane? It's only like an hour away and the traffic's shit, but think of the exposure. No, no, I can't do that. So the exposure from all of this stuff is interesting. And sometimes, yeah, people have been critical about that. They said, you know, Troy's commenting or something because it's just to get his brand out there or get his name out there. I I think, like I said earlier on when I talked about explaining sort of technology to people through courses, I think it's really interesting to have the opportunity to explain things that can be complex or foreign concepts to people and try to put it in a way that they can absorb and understand. So think about data breaches, right? And your average person. You know, how much does your average, normal, everyday person who doesn't live in our world actually understand about data breaches? You know, who are these hackers? Why do they all have hoodies? You know, like, what is going on? And I find that an interesting opportunity to be able to explain that. So I do get enjoyment out of speaking to the media. And yes, certainly the exposure does help as well, because that then drives awareness of the things that I do. There'll be companies who say, look, you know, we saw you on the news or something the other day, you know, talking about the latest cyber security incident, you know, latest data breach or something. And it made us aware that we need to do more training, etc. Would you like to, you know, come down to Sydney for a couple of days? You know, great. That's obviously good stuff. But I wouldn't want to ever sort of get to that position where people think, look, this is all just there's like a solitary goal here. You know, the goal is just to increase brand or just to make money out of it. Because I think most people who listen to this can see that I genuinely do love what I do as well, and I'm passionate and I enjoy doing that. The trick for me now, as I look at the clock and realise I'm going to be snowboarding very, very soon, is to try and find the sweet spot between how much of that I do and where the balance is. And the realisation that I've been having very recently is that the last 3 and a bit years since I've been independent, I've just said yes to everything. Almost everything. And that's not fully sustainable either. And people go, well, how do you get so much done? Well, I'm just getting up super early in the morning, which I'm comfortable with, but working from very, very early through to very, very late. And then filling out every spare moment in the day, doing other things of that nature. So I'm going to try and start to find a little bit more balance in that. And I don't think that's going to mean any immediate changes that are obvious to people. But it means I'm trying to reduce the amount of travel, for example, and certainly the last half of this year will reflect that. I think I have actually had to try and just file a lot more emails that I get. People email me and they'll ask general questions about things, or put things that basically I think I can get away with not responding to. And I feel kind of bad about that. Before you sort of go, well, there's templates and canned responses and things. I don't want to start a narrative which then requires more and more effort on an ongoing basis. So, yeah, things like that have to change a little bit. And we'll see. One other little thing I've done, actually, while I've been away is I've stopped looking at all my well, actually, how does Twitter phrase it? I've stopped looking at like all the notifications, which includes all the RTs and the likes and everything, when there's just this massive timeline of noise, and just focused on the mentions. So I'm not quite sure how popular different tweets and things are, but at least I do see the mentions. I don't have a plan to stop seeing those for a while. But yeah, look, things will evolve a little bit, and I'll try and make what I'm doing a little bit more sustainable and try to have a little bit more downtime as well, because this has been a really, really nice 5 days so far. So last thing, because all of this show does still have to roll on, is sponsorship-wise, it is NetSparker again this week, and I've spoken a lot about NetSparker before. One of these companies where I have had a long relationship with them now, originally as a customer back in my corporate days, and more recently with them as a sponsor. And I often use their tools in workshops and things as well, just to show what dynamic analysis looks like. This is what it is. You pointed to this URL, it finds all your broken things and gives you some cool reports. So I'm really happy with those guys, and that's just one of those relationships where they're just good people, you know, and I really enjoy every interaction with them. And of course, they make a really good product too. And there's a bunch of other companies like that I've been working with. Obviously, 1Password, Ubiquity is another one, F-Secure is another one. So organisations that just do super cool stuff, and I'm very, very glad to share what they do, irrespective of the commercial side of things. So that is it. This video is not going to get any editing because I've actually managed to not turn my PC on all week, which has been pretty cool. I'm going to see if I can get away with that. I might have to turn it on just to sort of do the blog post and stuff that accompanies this. But this is going to go straight from here. I've got to go and find a spot on the mountain a little bit higher where the signal is better so I can actually upload the video in the first place. And I think I've got to snap a still photo so I can put that on the blog post, and then we're job done. So thank you very much for watching. I know this is a bit shorter and it's not the normal cyber things. I obviously haven't blogged or done anything like that this week. But maybe it explains a little bit of a different side of some of the things going on inside my head, and a little bit more about snow in Australia as well. So thanks very much for watching. Friday next week, I'll be back home on the sunny Gold Coast, looking a whole lot warmer than what I am now. See you later, guys.